Hey, Galaxy fans. This is Mike Gray from The Striker. And to talk with me about the LA Seattle game, this is my co host, Alex Ruiz.
Hey everybody.
We got some new theme music that we're going to get thrown out. Technically, we'll be putting it shortly, but just, looking at all the games, getting this podcast going one easy at a time. So, Alex, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Still hear the music, but pretty good so far. But there you go, it's gone now. But yeah, I'm doing good. Mike, how are you doing?
Doing great. I was supposed Galaxy MLS Next Pro game versus North Texas, but Sunday I thought I would take the day off. We have a colleague, Kandrima. It was her birthday. Funny story. We were there at Dodger Stadium having a blast, just having a few, kicking back, and then, all of a sudden I get a message from Alex, and he's like, "You at the Dodger game?" And then, kind of instinctively, I checked my Instagram stories, and there's Alex at the game with his significant other, having a great time.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah, I was with my girlfriend and her family. Went to a game, and that was the same day Mike was there. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see us both there at the same time. Having a day off. I mean, when you cover soccer, sometimes it's just nice to go to another stadium and just not have to think. And you can't really do much better than Dodger Stadium. I mean, me and Jimmy, we were actually getting upset because there's a new pitching rule, and an hour into the game, it was like the fifth inning, and now we're
Yes.
and now we're laughing because I mean, like back in the day, you could show up to a Dodger game late, like in the third inning, take off early. Those days are over. So,
Yeah,
but
I learned that too. I got there a little bit later. It was like the third inning, maybe like bottom of the third, right when they got into my seats. So yeah, I get there on time. If you plan to go on any baseball game, Major League Baseball game this year, get there on time.
yeah, but oh, man, I had a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to go back in a few weeks, but all right, let's get to the action. We only got a half hour, I suppose. L.A. It was a Saturday afternoon game. I guess we should start with the protest. Uh, Ooh, nice hat, Alex. Hey, I got mine too right here. So,
And there
although
we go.
you can't really drink, you got to be 21 to get one of these, Alex. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I'm not there yet.
I'll sneak you in next time, but just don't say anything.
Not on the record.
Yep. Not on the record. We'll do some not on the record talk later. But yeah, Taylor told me he had talking about how he wanted to see the boycott and he was looking forward to it. I kind of laughed because I mean I know what he meant, which was that he wanted to see what was going on. But a part of me is like, dude, you don't want to be around right now because I mean, at the game it was one thing, but today, when I was rewatching the game, as Taylor described it, dead quiet.
hmm Yeah, I think I kind of got those similar vibes as well. Like this crowd is gonna make noise. It's not like it's quiet the entire 90 minutes, and nobody does anything. When the action is get going, and you're seeing the Galaxy get momentum. The crowd's gonna get momentum with it. But in those moments where Galaxy are kind of just playing out of possession, or there's a player hurt, or a stoppage in play, or any of those moments that you won't really see on those highlight reels. The stadium's quiet. It's kind of like you're watching a tennis match, right? Like it's not too crazy of an atmosphere. You kind of see the heads moving back and forth, watching all the passes go by. Um, I think overall you're kind of seeing the effects of the boycott. And like Twelman said on the broadcast, I got to watch it that Sunday morning. Yeah, it was pretty dead for most parts. And, obviously the parts where they score, it's going to be a bit louder. But in general, having less people than the first game of at Dignity Health Sports Park against the Whitecaps, you could tell that there was definitely a lower atmosphere and energy just in when assessing those 90 minutes.
It was like a G2 match. I mean, it was pretty, especially watching. I don't know how maybe you could watch an LAFC game and then watch a Galaxy game and then on TV at least, and then have the same sort of excitement. And that's a problem because, like we said before, El Traffic goes in 2 weeks. But that's we don't want to beat a dead horse. We've talked about that. Although to be fair, the fans didn't have a lot to be excited for either. Seattle, uh, they did their thing. Jordan Morris as a center forward is quite scary because unlike Ruiz, he just wants to attack. And we saw that happen pretty quickly in the first 20 minutes where, I mean, first that great. And then you saw Leo Chu. He had 4 assists in the last game, and it was like Groundhog Day. To be fair to Caligari, I'm sure he didn't know what he was getting into when he got beat on that play. But just 1, 2, 3, and all of a sudden, Galaxy are down 1-0.
Yeah, I'll say that on that play. I think Cáceres is kind of at fault because he goes into the midfield to press Ladero, and I understand, he's their most dangerous player, but when he kind of goes out there, Jalen Neal, Caligari, and Edwards kind of, don't go and push up forward with that defensive line, and then Ladero, this is just his greatness. He just makes an incredible ball where Caligari, where he's positioned body wise, he's gonna have to turn his whole body around and try to run and recover while Leo Chu is just off running, and then puts it on a platter for Morris. It was one of those goals where you're like, the Seattle kind of just outclassed the Galaxy in that department there, considering, Cáceres, his error of kind of going too high in the midfield. And to be fair, to him, that was kind of maybe the only option, considering there was no other midfielder nearby. Gaston Brugman was near the center of the pitch. He was the closest midfielder, while Ladera was more towards the end line. So I understand, needing to get pressure on their most dangerous player, but that was a good goal from Seattle. And, I think the Galaxy kind of just need to be aware in those moments and try not to let that happen again.
To be frank, I would rather just fast forward to the 3-5-2 in the second half. Talk about. But
Yes.
before that, we do have to talk about Ricky Puig. He's been struggling a little bit this season. I thought the idea that he could be an MVP candidate, I thought was a little optimistic. But if you don't have the full lineup, you can't expect him to perform at his best. But what I saw in that first half was a Ricky Puig who, it's almost like when you see a quarterback who has to like go in and out of several lines of just players running at him before he can actually get the ball, and that's a messy anecdote. But what I'm trying to say is that uh, Ricky has to do so much maneuvering just to advance the ball that by the time he gets it to a more offensive position or moves it up the field, the defense is already set. And this improved somewhat in the second half, but in the first, it was just so frustrating because the Galaxy simply cannot create anything more than these sort of half chances, semi-dangerous, but not like clear-cut chances. And it's a struggle because I can't count how many times, just to put that and the atmosphere into perspective. I can't count how many times I saw him just make these gestures. But one time he just took his hip, like he just kind of hit his hands and just hit him with his hips, and then you just heard this loud thwack because there was no like sound in the stadium, and it's obviously very frustrating.
Yeah, I think I'll say the one thing I've seen with Puig during the season is, I think last year we kind of saw him creating the chances a bit more. This year, from what I remember and what I watched, I feel like Puig is the guy who makes the pass that creates the chance. Not the pass that is the chance. One example comes in where he makes a great through ball for Caligari right on the near the 18, and Caligari cuts it into the box. Jovic, I think, gets a shot, but it's blocked. Right, like that's a chance right there. But Puig isn't the one making that pass. He's the one that is making that chance happen. And I think that still needs to be appreciated and something that you need to talk about a bit more. Because sure, he's not getting goals and assists, but he's still influencing and making that secondary pass that leads to the chance. And I still think that since he's not a number 10, he plays as a box-to-box midfielder, as an offensively oriented eight. He's doing excellent in that department. If you expect him to put up a bunch of goals and assists, I was thinking, even just like maybe like 10 goals and assists would be good for him. I didn't think he'd average, more than 6 goals, to be honest. I think he'll get a lot more assists as the season goes by. But to think that he's going to put up, Hani Mukhtar numbers like last year, I because of his position, how he plays, and how instrumental he is to the build-up for Vanny's team, I didn't really envision that too much when the season began. And, so far that prediction's kind of, showing itself a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's get to Jonathan Klinsmann because that was a point of controversy. On the second goal, Leo Chu got open in the field, drove right down the middle, and then he just played what was kind of a weak shot. But Something was very interesting. Klinsman dove to his left. And then the first thing he does after the ball sort of trickles past his fingers and goes into the net is he's checking out his right hand. And for me, uh, okay, internally at some point, we discovered that not Klein, but Klinsman had a broken finger, right? And then time goes on, and then we report it for the striker, and then come Friday, Klinsman in a social media post reveals that he's good to go for Saturday. Now, just to be frank, the first thing that I said to Alex was, there's a lot of moving pieces. Uh, it could very well be that he was injured, and then he got clearance at the last second. So, why don't we get to the game, see how it performs, talk to Vanny, straighten things out. Klinsman did not have a good performance on Saturday. Let's be fair; he only had one save to make, but sometimes the one, sometimes as Vanny himself mentioned in the last game, sometimes it's really important to just be able to make that one save, and he actually made FOTMob's ratings of like the worst players in a week, so that's nothing to hang your hat
Yeah, I
on.
thought that second goal from Leo Chu, I think if he's fully healthy, he should be able to save that. That wasn't a shot with a lot of ferocity to it. It was from like 28, 26 yards out. I think, if Klinsman's fully healthy, he should be able to save that. But like you said, being able to, once that goal went in, he kind of just like was checking out his finger, looked a bit in pain. I was, tipped earlier in the week that, Klinsman was dealing with something, that there was a possibility of a broken finger and that was really likely. So when he did make that social media post on, I think it was Friday night, caught me a bit surprised. I'd be like, wow, he's playing through a broken finger. He starts the game, plays the full 90, and then I think, was it Sunday or a Monday evening, he like posts something like, hey, it's been a tough week for me emotionally. I broke my finger in the Portland game, but got cleared to play at the last moment before our Seattle game. So, I guess I don't know if to say is that a good thing that you had a goalkeeper not fully healthy playing, especially when you kind of consider that there was one shot in the game that ended up being the game winner that I think, if he's fully healthy or there's another goalkeeper that's 100% could probably save. I mean, what do you think, Mike?
Absolutely not, Alex. And that's where I want to have a bit of a hot take. Um, if Klinsman wasn't ready to go, then the staff is at fault for clearing someone who obviously wasn't ready to play. You just signed a 21-year-old in Aaron Cervantes. Uh, if you signed him, obviously you have the faith in him to perform if the other players are injured or if they're not in form. So, again, I don't think it's that big of a hot take, but clearly, if Klinsman had a broken finger and he's cleared like a day or two before, and then he's grabbing his hand. That doesn't. You don't need a lot to know who that. Obviously, I mean, someone has to be at fault, right? It's not just
Yeah, I
something that happened. And
Yeah, I just want to interrupt you real quick. Sorry. Kind of what you were talking about, right? Like, just had this thought. Even if Klinsman is like healthy, right? He can still be on the bench, and you can start Cervantes. If worst comes to worst, and he gets hurt, you have Klinsman for maybe 60, 70 minutes maximum, right? Like you could have started this guy, gave him his first start. I feel like even if he was in the situation where Klinsman was for that first goal. I think that's a hard time for any goalkeeper. But that second goal, I feel like most goalkeepers should be able to parry that away at least.
yeah, so it is what it is. But I guess we'll just move on from that. Um, Good news was that was the end of a sort of a turgid first half. Vanny made some adjustments. He brought in Preston Judd, took out Memo Rodriguez, and the Galaxy switched to a 3-5-2 formation. Now, Alex, everyone loves you because you're able to pick out what the nuance in this game. So tell us, second half, what was the difference for Greg Vanny's side?
The difference was that Judd added a lot more work rate to this team. I think in the first half, if you really re-examine it a lot, all of the chances, are in a very, very congested area in that box, right? I think when you see those cutbacks for Jovic in the box, there's always a defender there to block it, or, there's always somebody reading the play a step ahead. But when you add in Preston Judd, who, I think he's not Dejan Jovic and Chicharito are, the most technical strikers on the team. I think Judd kind of lacks that, but he makes up for it in the energy, in the consistent runs, his bigger presence, right? I think Jovic is like 6 foot and you have Preston Judd who's 6'3", 6'4", right? Like that's a major difference. You have a guy that's running at defenders like that, kind of bruising them, beating up a little bit. It's gonna help Joveljic find those spaces and read where he needs to go. And like Judd, I think the only thing that really he needs to work on is those that finishing. We've seen a couple chances now where he could have should have had a goal, but was unlucky. I think as well, making those decisions in the final third near the box a little bit quicker. I feel like that's something he can work on. Where if he's able to make one pass here or a pass into space for somebody else, helps elevate what LA Galaxy can get out of that possession. But overall, I think Judd was really able to kind of beat up a little bit on Yamar, on Reagan, those Seattle center backs. They were kind of reading the game really well when it was just Joveljic up top. But when you add Judd, who's making unpredictable runs, who's kind of being the target man in a way. We know this Galaxy team likes to play in possession, likes to play on the ground, but when you have somebody like Judd, you're able to kind of play those balls over the top, and he can either fight for it, kind of hold it up for another teammate. He's kind of like that target man striker you can have, and you have another striker who's just more technical, who likes to be involved in that possession. It kind of complements one another, and that's what I asked Vanny post game. Like Joveljic and Chicharito are the same. They have the same play style. And I think that's one of the reasons why Greg Vanny never wanted to implement that two striker setup with them. But with Judd, you're getting a completely different play style. Somebody who kind of complements what Joveljic is doing, kind of waiting in the box, finding that right space when you have somebody who's trying to win these aerial duels, trying to make space in the box, trying to beat up a bit of those center backs. So they're a little bit more fatigued when you have Joveljic or Chicharito kind of making these runs all over. He agreed that, they're better when it comes to playing together than just Chicharito and Joveljic. So it'll be interesting to see how this upcoming game against Houston goes, with Vanny kind of seeing that for a whole half, right? Like we had Judd and Joveljic play maybe 30 minutes before this game together on the pitch, but now you have a whole half, and you see how that changes this team, and you kind of see how this roster could also play that as well. I think they have plenty of pieces that can adapt and be able to play in this 3-5-2.
Well said, Alex. I was always Team Vanny with the 3-5-2 just because, he gave it a shot. He gave it several shots, and every time the personnel just fell flat. Like you said, Chicharito and Joveljic, they just didn't fit. What we saw this half was very encouraging. I mean, the Galaxy ended the game with 2.5 xG. They looked legitimately dangerous for probably the first time all year. Uh, let's hear from the boss about the big man himself.
Preston's a handful. That's who he is. Like, there's not a lot of glitz and glamour inside of his game, but he's an SOB on the field. It's just so hard to deal with, and he'll keep running and fighting and gets himself into goals. He doesn't care about the other phases of the game. He wants to score goals.
What else was really effective was Tyler Boyd. He actually got switched to the right flank, and it's interesting. They were mentioning on the broadcast that Vanny doesn't see him as a one-on-one 1v1 winger, which is very interesting because me and Alex were trying to figure out, all right, who is Tyler Boyd going to be? This was the one guy that we were sort of hyping up in a way as the one guy who could be the one-on-one winger, the one guy who could be direct. And what we saw is that when they switched to 3-5-2, he was that more direct winger. He was linking up with players. And all of a sudden, you saw the Galaxy creating, again, clear-cut chances for the first time. I'm a real big fan of Preston Judd. When you hear the guy up close, you just want to root for him. Dude's singularly focused. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, Alex, but he does remind me just a little bit of Alan Gordon, where he's just got that mentality where he just wants to score. And mentality is big in this game, especially when, like Vanny said, you don't have the glitz and the glamour, and you just need those little things to give. I think we're at the point where we're gonna come to 3-5-2. I'm down with it. For me, I don't know. I mean, like I said, they know that they can do it. They should just utilize it more starting in Houston. Now, before I want to get to someone I was a little disappointed by, Jalen Neal had a really good performance. I've been saying on this pod lately that I thought he was due a little bit for something in the final third, and he had a bit of a striker's instinct. He was the first one to sort of, even when you saw that ball go towards Fry, he was first to the ball, and then, he obviously scored, and that was a great moment.
Yeah, I think it was great to kind of see that from Jalen Neal. I mean, I think he deserves it. just for the recognition of what he's been able to do. You don't see it so often. A 19-year-old start MLS games, go full 90, and especially with the LA Galaxy. This has been a team that is constantly trying to be in a win now mode, trying to bring a good collection of players. Usually not a team that's too patient when it comes to younger players, academy players in recent years. We've kind of seen just Julian, and I don't even know about where this says Efra now in this, but like Julian was maybe the major player from the youth setup that's really been able to kind of cement himself in that starting 11. I think Jalen Neal's now that guy, a guy coming up from the academy cementing himself into the starting 11. And I think it was great to see him be able to kind of celebrate this moment. I remember one time I got to talk to Jalen. I think I was talking to his mom, and she told me that when he first started playing, he was it was a goalkeeper, I think. And every goal that he let in, he would cry after the game. He was just a little
Oh,
boy. But now that he's older, you're kind of seeing that composure where he's built to play football, where those instincts, that IQ, that ability to kind of know and have a knack for the game. I think you're really starting to see that a lot more in these past couple of games. As the season goes on, and if he's continued to play at this level, it'll be extremely impressive. Like I said, you don't really see it where many 19-year-old center backs can just cement themselves into an 11 so easily. And having a veteran like Cáceres next to him is just going to help him even more for his career. I mean, he's already got a lot of potential, and I think if he can finish out the season as a starter, like his time with the LA Galaxy, you're gonna have teams from Europe who are looking at MLS now, where they see a young defender succeeding. I know it's too early to get on that train right now, but if he's able to do what he's doing right now, he's on that path to make it to Europe. But again, I know it's a little early, but either way, it's still great to recognize what he's been able to do and how he's been able to, play so mature on the pitch. Again, you don't see that in many 19-year-olds.
well, Jalen Neal's definitely on the hype train, and everyone's on the Jalen Neal hype train. A player who's kind of felt a bit cool lately is Dejan Joveljic. I was disappointed in his play. We can talk about service, but what he thrived on was he didn't need a lot of opportunities to put one away, and we're seeing a bit of the opposite when he's been a starter. He had a lot of, he had at least two or three opportunities where he could maybe put the ball down where someone crossed it to him, and he just had an off day with his touches, and he wasn't dangerous, and that's a problem because it's starting to become the rap with Joveljic is that he was effective off the bench, but he's struggling to be effective as a starter, Alex.
Yeah, I posted about that a couple times to start the year. Got some flack for that, but the numbers are the numbers. This Galaxy team just hasn't been able to prove it can win with Dejan Joveljic, starting up top. And I think when you kind of see a bigger sample size of that, you've got to say this guy just isn't going to cut it as a starter. It's not just that he's a bad player. We know he's got quality. He got called up for his national team. Just the way in the system with Vanny so far, it complements him if he just comes off the bench where he can kind of get on those tired legs, where he can read the game a little bit better. And I think you've kind of seen that with Judd a little bit. When he's coming in the second half, he's looked a lot better. You're kind of seeing that what Joveljic added last year, kind of seeing that with Judd. So I'm really interested to see if Chicharito comes back for this week, maybe. I'll talk to Vanny tomorrow at training. Will he start Joveljic and Judd together and have maybe Chicharito on the bench? That's something to experiment with. I mean, I know going to Houston isn't easy, but I mean it's the easiest game, on paper wise, compared to the other fixtures that are in April. So if he wants to try this, something that worked against one of the best teams in MLS, against a team that was competing in the Club World Cup, I think if he's able to go with a 3-5-2 again against Houston and see another positive result, like I think you might have to, if you're Greg Mann, you might have to think about, kind of switching your tactics around because it's complementing the players, complementing the systems, and getting the best out of everybody still.
Hey, I've said, and a lot of people, to be fair, have said that Greg Vanny's an excellent coach, but what separates the good from the great is the great manage when they find themselves in a corner. They manage to coach their way or manage their way out of the situation. How does Vanny get out of this very tricky situation? That's how what's going to separate, maybe him from being a good coach from being someone who might be, a coach of the year candidate. In
Mhm.
theory, let's see him win a few games first before we even start to talk about that. But um, okay, now we need to talk about the Vanny rant. let's see. There's the circus part of it, which was, the meme. Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to do that, but there's the meme. There's the argument about whether the handballs were legitimate. To be fair, I'm not really interested in all that. For me, two things can be true at the same time. One, yes, the Galaxy have been robbed lately, more than once. And, to be fair to I like him a lot as a person, and Adrian and Heath. There's certain coaches who try and show people up. You could tell that it was a very measured attempt by him to just be honest and just kind of stick to the facts and not make it personal. So I do respect that. And this was overshadowed by everything, but Caligari on the play where Morris actually scored the opener. He actually had his sock torn because he got stepped on by, I believe it was Leo Chu, and it was his point of controversy where he was actually gesturing afterwards, and that got kind of overlooked. So I think the Galaxy were additionally robbed. Now here's the part where it gets kind of where it gets serious is, was Vanny trying to deflect? And and that's where Football America saw Hercules Gomez. He was upset about what he saw, and he actually framed it as Vanny trying to obscure, or he thinks that what Vanny was doing was being frustrated or venting his frustration about the club and everything that the club is dealing with right now. I agree that Vanny might have deflected, and we actually talked about this right outside the stadium. It was one of the first things we kind of, once we were all able to breathe a little bit, was to go, okay, was this an attempt by Vanny to deflect? And where I disagree with Herc is before it was about the club situation. I don't think Vanny was thinking. I don't think he was overthinking it. I think that he was just simply thinking about his team and the fact that there's a very good chance now that if they go to Houston, they don't get 3 points, and then they play the hottest team in the league. That's going to be difficult for them to win. They could be going 7 games in the season winless with a supporters boycott. I mean, that's just a total disaster. And so, for me, I mean, what do you think? It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I was very caught off guard when, kind of Vanny kind of went off a little bit. I believe, and this is just my belief, he's just frustrated with kind of just how the things are going on the pitch, because look, the Galaxy aren't playing bad. It's not like this team is struggling to put up shots, or they're struggling to play out of their own half. Like, this team is doing a good job in creating chances and being able to kind of move the ball. And I think if they're able to get these shots off, that I think Seattle had like over 10 shots blocked in this game. So the Galaxy were getting in good positions, just their shots were getting blocked by the defenders. They were able to kind of dominate that second half. And I think against Portland, that first half, for those first 80, 85, 86 minutes, right? They were the better team. They were able to be on the front foot and kind of dictate the play. I think against Vancouver, they looked a lot better in that game, considering their first 2 games were pretty bad objectively, in the way they played and kind of just how they approached it. But I think the Galaxy are making those steps forward. And like Vanny mentioned in his, rant a little bit, like they should have gotten that handball goal that was called off on Joveljic against Vancouver, right? Like, the ref is like all the way back. How is he going to make that definitive call when, and when we have VAR, what matters is the original call, right? Because that's what you're going to be looking to overturn. And because he called a handball, it has to be clear and obvious that it wasn't. And because of that, they weren't able to overturn it and give that goal that would have been a game winner. Against Portland, there was a shot that one of the Portland defenders, I think, was in the first half, I think, where the ball kind of just hits an arm and just kind of deflects out there. That should have been looked at, something that the referees should have, been able to hear from the VAR that, like, hey, we got something we're reviewing, kind of stop the play a bit. I understand that, and then, against Seattle this past week, where Newhook is, kind of chicken winging it, kind of making himself bigger, whether it's intentional or not, he is making himself bigger. We can all objectively agree that, when you're doing a chicken wing, you're still covering a bit more space than when your arms are behind you. So I think he has all justifications to kind of go off about the refs, about that. But it's not because this team is dealing with horrible play, or because they're just struggling on the field. Like, they're progressing on the field. I know they've struggled to score goals, but I mean, they've had a lot of chances. They have some of the best players when it comes to progressing the ball into the final third, right? Gaston Brugman, Ricky Puig, both lead the league in those categories, and they played a game less than like a majority of the league. Like this team is able to move the ball, do what they've been able to do. Just that final third instinct, that decision in the final third is just lacking. And again, they've been unlucky with these calls not going their way. And I think Vanny kind of showed his passion for his team that like, look, we're doing everything we can to put ourselves in position to win, but something that we can't control is kind of leading us to kind of just be frustrated. And I think, he mentioned, right, that the refereeing is the only entity in the game that they can do a do-over on, and they're not doing that. And I understand where that frustration comes from. If I was in his shoes, I'd be pretty mad too.
He wants the results, and yeah. And when it comes down to it, this team right now is grinding for points. So to have this sort of bad luck, I agree. Let's see, anything else? Yes, Alex, would you like to answer this chat in the chat room? Okay, here we go. Vanny is wait, wrong comment. All right, Alex, any rumored players coming in? We need more offense and finishing things.
Yeah, I think these last two games you've kind of really seen that the wings is still lacking. I think Tyler Boyd, although he kind of had a good game against Seattle, you kind of want to be able to get somebody else. I think add a bit more depth. We saw Efrain Alvarez not come off the bench. I think Vanny's kind of seeing that Alvarez isn't as reliable of a game changer. We kind of saw that against Portland. He kind of didn't really add much. And again, I think if you kind of want to get out of this slump, putting a player like Alvarez, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to do much to kind of spark something offensively. So far, the transfer window closes in 20 days on April 24th. We're recording on April 4th today. Tomorrow I'll be heading to training. I'll ask Greg Vanny, if they have the budget to be able to go get a player. I mean, they just signed a goalkeeper. I'm sure he's on loan, but they had to get an international spot. They were still finding Gam. So we got to see how much they're getting. I know the Julian Araujo sale definitely helped them recover some of that general allocation money, but still you kind of got to make sure that you have everything that you need to be able to go get a foreign player. You need to get another international roster spot, and we'll just have to see what happens for these last 20 days. I'll be at training tomorrow, bring you guys updates, so be sure to follow my Twitter to see what goes on, what Vanny says. But so far I haven't really heard anything of a player coming in.
All right. Well, Alex, I'm afraid it's 7 o'clock, 7:03 to be exact. So we're at the end of the program. One more announcement. Registration for the Liga G Gold Cup is open. Due to close tomorrow, so make sure you go on Twitter, sign up for that. The music's so loud, but like I said, we are working up the kinks. So
Liga G is amazing. You guys go and play. Right a PlayStation. I'd probably be joining them. I love FIFA, so take advantage of this. So I think it's great what they're doing. I wrote a story about them in the off season, so I love what they're doing over there, and I think it's such a great experience. If you're able to participate, it'll be lots of fun. Again, I wish I could, but I don't have a PlayStation.
yeah, I need. So we need super chats so we can buy some video games of our own. Like I said, we don't get a lot of time off, and okay. They're going to equipment, not to video games. So just so you know. So, all right. I'm Mike Gray from the Striker. This is Alex Ruiz. Subscribe to the Striker and get an 11-day free trial. The content is worth it. I guarantee it. Have a good night, everybody.